the charitable side of Elvis always comes up because I know he had gifted you all with many things. Do you care to tell us, Bob, about the gun?
The 44.
Yeah.
He was in his room in Memphis up there.
At Graceland?
Yeah,
Okay.
at Graceland, and he'd watched that Magnum Force.
Okay,
So
Clint
he-
Eastwood.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he bought matching ones like this, and he gave me this one in the holster.
There at Graceland, he
Yeah.
gifted it to you.
Yeah.
Do you care to whip that thing out for the camera?
I don't remember, Bob. How did the conversation come up? Was he showing it to you? And
Yeah, remember in the bedroom there, he was showing me where he blew out shot the TVs out in his bedroom.
and then he brought the gun out, and you were looking at it. And then
Yeah,
did he
right.
just say, "I'm giving it to you"? I don't remember.
And he says, "Yours." I said, "You know me." I said, "Hey, Elvis, I'm not a gun enthusiast." And anyway, no, he says, "I want you to have it." He said he got it when Magnum Force came out with Clint Eastwood. He had a pair of them in there.
That's right. He did have two, didn't he?
Yeah, so he put this on me, as little as I am, and it hung me down here. I said, "I don't need that. You know, no, I want you to have it."
Wow.
You know,
That's
you really don't. Joe Esposito told us you don't really tell him no, you know, I mean, because he really likes to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's just, that's just Elvis.
So tell him about the
They
night
call
you
him
got
Big
your
Pete.
truck.
He
that's
called
a
me.
great story.
He called, I was assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration at the time, and he called just before quitting time, and the secretary puts him on hold, and she was a real Elvis fan, and she knew my relationship with him and everything, and she says, "Hey, Bob, there's some guy on the phone that says he's Elvis Presley." I said, "Oh, okay." So I answered the phone. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Just getting ready to leave." He said, "You got any plans for tonight?" I said, "No, just going home." He said, "Can you stop by the motel on your way home?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he was staying at the
Regency.
Stofers. No, he was staying at the Stofers.
Yeah,
Right,
Stofers,
pretty
yeah.
bad.
When,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
when it
Stofers,
was
that's
on Quebec and Martin
Yeah.
Luther King.
Sometimes he stayed at Ramada.
Yeah.
Like that.
But he was staying at the Stofers that night, and so I stopped by there, and when I got up there, up to his room, he was here to go to attend the funeral services for Gene Kennedy, and
Which is Jerry's brother.
Jerry's
Right.
brother.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I got up there, Chief Dill and his wife were there. They were just leaving. Elvis had just gotten out of the shower. He was in his bathrobe, and he was getting ready to go pay his respects to the Kennedy family. So whenever he would come to town, he would show me a new move, you know, and he said, "Here, I'm going to show you something you can use out on the streets." And he called Red West over to use as a tackling dummy, you might say. And then he had him on the ground that quick. I said, "Now do it so I can see what you were doing." You know?
Right.
And so he did it again, and we were laughing and this and that. And it was the night of was it the Pro Bowl? It was a football game we had on in the other room. He had two adjoining rooms. And we had the football game on going in one room. And so we were sitting in there. And then Ron showed up shortly thereafter. We're watching the football game, and he gets up and goes into the other room. And then he called Ron. And he said, "Ron, come in here for just a minute." And then you can tell him what he said to you when you got in there. But pretty soon Ron comes back and he says, "I need to leave for a little while." He says, "Can you hang around?" I said, "Yeah, but I got a big day tomorrow." I said, "I'm going to leave in a little while." He said, "Well, just hang around till I get back. Help me drive Elvis and the guys over to the Kennedy house." He said, "And then you can go home from there." I said, "All right, that's fine." So he was gone probably an hour, maybe
Ron?
two. Yeah,
Maybe two,
maybe two.
3.
So by the time he got back, Elvis was all dressed and ready to go and put on his coat and stuff. And we took him down the back fire escape because there were people down in the lobby. They had heard he was there and they were trying to get up to see him. So we took him down the back way, down the fire escape. and out into the parking lot. And it was probably, by that time, it was probably about 10 o'clock at night. And we're walking through the parking lot, and we had a circle around him, and I'm right on his right side, and we're walking through the parking lot, and he stops. And I turned around because I heard people behind us. I turned around to look, and when I turned back around, we're underneath this parking lot light, big, real bright arc light, and here's this beautiful 1976 Dodge Power Wagon, black, nice tires and wheels, just sparkling.
Right.
And he goes, "Wow, that's really a pretty truck, don't you think?" I said, "Wow, that's beautiful." And he put his arm around my shoulders. Come here, Nick. Come here. It was like, no, just sit down.
Okay.
Put his arm around his shoulders like this, and he had the keys in this hand.
Right.
He said, "Well, it's yours."
Wow.
I said, "What?" And I look around, all these guys are laughing because they all knew,
Right.
except me. I was the only one that didn't know. I said, "Come on." I looked around, I said, "Ron, he's kidding, isn't he?" He grabbed me by the arm, and back then, on the temporary permit that they would put on it,
Right.
they would put your name and address on it.
Right.
Takes me, grabbed a flashlight from one of the guys, takes me around the back of the truck, shines the flashlight on the temporary permit, and there's my name and address on the
Wow.
temporary permit.
Wow.
I didn't know what to do. I mean, I laugh or cry. My knees got wobbly. I turned around. I hugged him. He was laughing. He loved doing things like that. So what did he tell you when he took you in the other room?
To go pick up the truck.
Yeah, but-
because he had asked me earlier that day. He said, "Hey, we forgot to buy anything for your brother." He said the other night when we were doing all those trucks and cars. He said, "What is your brother like?" I said, "He's a Dodge guy. He likes Dodges." He said,
Right.
"Do you know a Dodge dealer?" I said, "Well, I do. The Cadillac dealer that we bought the Cadillacs from is good friends with the Dodge dealer." And he said, "Well, go see if you can put something together." So I called Skeet, who you got that picture of, and he called down the Dodge store. And I asked them if they had a black truck, and they said, "We happen to have one on the showroom floor."
Nice.
And so we went and picked it up. When I left, when he asked me in the room and I left, I went and picked it up and brought it back.
See the guy in the, no, go down. See the Mrs. Jack Kent,
Oh, okay.
Elvis and Skeets, and that was the
That
deal
was
there.
inside the Lisa Marie.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's-
okay. Okay. I was going to actually. I had that pulled up on my phone. I was going to
I saw
ask you
that
earlier.
That's, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's the general manager at the Cadillac place.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that the owner of the Cadillac store, that's his wife in the middle.
And that was taken on the Lisa Marie.
Yeah, they wanted to see the inside of the airplane, so
Ah.
we took him inside.
Stephen, there's a picture of the truck up there with a copy of the check that he paid for it with right below it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where's it at, Bobby?
Right up there on
Oh,
top.
way
Wow.
up on top.
I'm a Dodge guy too, so
Oh,
I
man,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Well, he was here, what was it, 2 weeks before that night, he was here, and he bought 7 vehicles for these guys.
Actually, it was more than that.
Was it?
Yeah, we figured it out the other night. He bought either 11 or 12 altogether between Bob and mine and Don Kinney and Dr. Starkey and Jerry, Red's wife, Sonny's wife, Joe's girlfriend, Jerry's girlfriend. We added them all up. There was about 11 or 12 total.
And I was out of town one that night, so that's why he decided
Ah,
that
I
2 weeks
see.
later he had to get me one, and
Wow.
it was amazing.
Fantastic story. Now, you got a Lincoln, correct?
No, he got the Seville.
Cadillac Seville.
Bob got
Okay.
the
Oh, the
Cadillac.
Model T.
Jerry Kennedy got the Lincoln.
Okay. Okay.
Him and Dr. Starkey.
And the doctor, right? Okay. Forget it's. I mean, there's so many cars that he gave away, and then I try and track them all down because they're still out there somewhere, right? So if you sold, understood. If you kept it, understood. But they go on somewhere if they're sold. But the Dr. Starkey car, a buddy of mine owns.
Really?
Yeah, and then the Lincoln, the blue Lincoln.
That belonged to Jerry.
Right.
The Bill Blass model.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. That's going to come up for sale in April at Bonham's, the Bonham's car auction, because it's in Tupelo now.
Oh,
but they're
darn.
liquidating that collection. So fast forward, I try and find the cars, and there's a couple other guys like myself that are just kind of obsessed about the cars and who got them and what colors and what options and where they're at. And it might seem like minutia, but we're like really intense about it.
intense about it,
We're,
yeah.
so we hear different numbers and we're immediately like, oh wait, well, we heard 10, now we're hearing 12. We're, the other two, we got to figure out who got them, where they're at. So.
Did you hear the story how the DJ got his? Don
Kenny?
was his
No,
name?
no, not DJ. Newscaster.
Oh, news guy, yeah.
Yeah, I told him.
On the
story.
radio. Oh, you told him?
Yeah,
On TV.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple versions on how that went down. And I've researched it. The truth was he like hinting for one?
I don't think so. Well, he said.
He came out and
said
asked
that.
him.
Well, he said that
He was
morning.
joking, but
he
he
said, if you're listening, Elvis, I like Seville's, is the way he put it. And it was, it was a joke, but Elvis said, that's when he said to me, call him do you know him? Call him on the
Yeah.
phone. But, it was, Don never expected it. First of all, I don't think he even thought Elvis was listening that day, okay?
Right,
And it
right.
just happened to be that he was.
Right.
Most of the time at that time in the morning, he was still sleeping,
Sure.
Elvis was a night person. He slept during the day and stayed awake at night.
Wow. Now, jump in here because I want to hear the story in regards to serving the food. I know you brought it out earlier. If it's still here, it'd be cool to get it on camera. But Phyllis,
Well,
yeah, because this
you
is a
know,
great story.
So I meet Elvis, and Elvis 16 years old. They bring him into the mine company. The guys bring him in, and sitting down on the bottom level, two of the police women, which that's a picture. That's the picture right there. The two police women and Elvis. He's actually looking at a black diamond ring, but the two police women, I believe those are the ones that he was with that night. I'm not sure about that. Is
No,
that-
no, they weren't there.
So they were just two Denver police women.
Yeah, they were just two police. They weren't with us that night.
Yeah, but they were. So he comes in with the two police women, and he's sitting on the bottom. But the bottom level was dark. It was a dark area. It was a little area, and we were closed. Nobody was there that night. He came in late at night. We stayed open because we used to do this all the time. Because Buck and Cindy'd say, "Can stay open because we have Clint Eastwood coming in." Stay open because so we'd stay open.
And this is a 5-star restaurant.
Oh, absolutely.
Downtown.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
downtown.
Well, it's in Glendale.
In
Okay,
Glendale.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And Glendale was the place to be back then. That was the place to be. And so he comes in and with his entourage, and and he's in a policeman's uniform. And so,
But you weren't closed, Nikki. It was.
Was I open?
No, you were wide open because that's why we sat in.
Oh, that's
that's
right,
why
that's
we
right,
came
that's
through the
right.
kitchen, and that's why we sat in that corner around the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we didn't want it to be noticed. But then he wanted to go to the restroom.
Okay.
Remember
All right.
the story?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
took him to the restroom, and he walked by all the people sitting waiting for a table in his uniform. Nobody recognized him, and I think we talked about it later. Bob and I and Jerry, we talked about it later. I think it upset him a little bit because nobody recognized him.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because the minute he went to the
Should've had
restroom,
the uniform.
and I walked with him, and we went back to the table. It wasn't 15, 20 minutes later. He said, "I have to use the restroom again."
Yeah.
And I thought, Joe and I talked about it later, and he said he was upset because nobody really recognized
Now
him.
the second time they recognized him.
So we walked by these two women again who were sitting there, and they saw him the first time. As we walked by the second time, one of them said to the other one, "That cop," because he was in a uniform,
Right.
"that cop reminds me of Elvis." And he heard that as he was going in. So as he comes back out, he stops and gives it that grin that he had,
Right.
and this
The
woman
whiplash smile.
went berserk.
Yeah.
She said, "This really is Elvis," and I went like this because the place was packed.
Yeah.
Right.
And he shook their hand, and the one of them held her hand up and he kissed her hand, and then we walked back to the table. But no, you guys were open.
Yeah,
It was open.
Wow.
But anyway, that night, he just got done with the concert. I think that was didn't he just get done with the concert that night?
Night before.
At McNichols?
Yeah, night before.
Yeah, night before. So he kind of, he asked, what was good on the menu and stuff, and we, suggested the price. I always suggested the prime rib because we had great prime
Yeah,
rib.
he did.
And then, I said something about the Fool's Gold sandwiches, and he was grinning, and he said, "Well, bring me some of those, and bring the girls whatever." I think they both had lobster tails, as I remember.
Could be.
Yeah. And so I got the food together and took it down there and introduced him to the sandwich. And he ate two nice chunks of the Fool's Gold sandwich. He really liked it. Back then it was peanut butter, jelly, and blueberry preserves. That's how we used to make them.
Wow.
And I mean, I had the pan. It was decorated with fruit. It was a beautiful pan of sandwiches.
Right.
Didn't it have the bacon on it too?
Yeah, oh yeah, peanut butter, jelly, and bacon. And he ate 2 of those, and that was a short meeting that night. It wasn't a short meeting, but it was just, you know, he got done, he got up, and they left. But, you know, he gave me a little hug and, you know, said thank you very much. And, you know, and so and then after that was the deal with on the airplane, you know, when we delivered the sandwiches up to his daughter. And
For the birthday.
yeah, it
for
was
Lisa Marie's birthday.
8th birthday, I think.
Eighth.
Eighth
Yeah.
birthday. And so he calls. Did he call you? I can't remember. If he called to do that.
I was on the plane with him.
Yeah, he was flying. You guys were flying
Yeah,
in.
me and Bob and Jerry were all coming
Yeah.
back from Memphis. We'd been down there in Memphis.
Yeah.
And he asked us to call the mine company and get you guys to bring the sandwiches.
Yeah. So we brought this and a bunch of food. We, you know, Buck and Cindy. We brought prime rib. We brought
Oh, yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And he in that table he had that middle table.
Right.
It was full of food.
Wow.
Full of food. And it was Lisa's 8th birthday, so we made a little birthday cake for her. And I remember that because I made the birthday cake.
Wow.
Which I don't know how to do, but I did it. And so, you know, we hung out with her for a while, and then we took off. And Buck and Cindy were there, as I remember.
Yeah.
And it was me, Buck, and Cindy, and I think it was one of my guys too was with me
You
because
know
he
who
helped.
else was there? Is the waitress
Molly.
Molly with
Molly
the real
was there.
short hair.
Molly, yeah, Molly was there. She helped with it. Yeah, Molly was our best waitress. She was unbelievable. She was
Excuse me.
incredible waitress. And you know, we put the food down, and you know, I got to talk to Elvis for a little while, and I sat with him for a minute on the sofa there, and got to talk to him for a little bit, and then we took off, put the food down, and took off.
Wow.
But yeah, it was quite a deal.
So tell them about Nick. Since that time, had through his wife Kathleen, they've trademarked and patented that sandwich.
Yeah,
So
Oh.
if you call it Fool's Gold anywhere else, he can come after you.
yeah.
That's smart. A few questions. Some of the places you mentioned, I know the mine company's gone.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's gone.
Okay.
The Cadillac dealership is gone. The mine company is gone.
The police gymnasium.
Is the police gym still?
Yeah, District 2.
Is it
5,
still?
I think it's called.
Is it still the Merle Nadine gym?
Yeah.
Is it still
Yeah.
under?
It says in about Elvis giving the money. and stuff.
Oh, no kidding. Is all the equipment? Is it all still there?
No, I mean, it's been a while. I'm sure it's worn out pretty
Been
good.
updated, maybe.
I
Okay.
don't know about that, but I mean, you know, a lot of guys work out.
Yeah. On another note regarding Elvis with the uniform on, I've read a couple different accounts and heard a couple different stories. He had the coat custom made, right? Is that correct? On
No.
a tailor?
Well, here's how it happened. He wanted the uniform. Jerry went. He liked that type of uniform.
Double-breasted.
That uniform like Jerry was wearing
This
was
is it here.
Like a dress.
it was a
uniform.
dress uniform,
Okay.
right? So he liked that. So he wanted one. Jerry went and bought him the coat, but it was way too big.
Okay.
So we happened to know a guy that worked as a tailor. And again, remember the story I told you about? You call somebody and say, hey,
It's
this
Elvis.
is for Elvis.
Right.
Happened with 2 different guys in that same hotel. So we called the guy who worked at a store called Fashion Bar. And he was the tailor there. Called
Right.
him on the phone, said, hey, Elvis needs his coat trimmed. And he said, I'll be right there. Comes down. He fits it for him, takes it back, gets it all sewed up and fitted, tailored perfect, and brings it back. Elvis was really slim at that time.
Yeah.
He hadn't gained his weight.
Right.
And then he wanted his haircut at that same hotel. And the barber that Jerry and I were using at the time, we called him on the phone and said, hey, Elvis wants a haircut. Okay, I'll be right there. I mean, he came down
Wow.
and cut his hair right there in the hotel.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's Danny right there. I'll be darned.
Yeah.
I have a picture of everything.
Who's this?
The barber.
The barber.
Oh, no.
Who's the guy? Who's this?
That's one of the kids that he's that autistic kid. And we sent him to Graceland. We raised the money, sent him to Graceland.
It's,
This is the barber
Yeah,
right
that's
here.
and there's
Oh, okay. So all the accessories on the uniform, did y'all give him some of these pieces to complete that outfit?
The badge and everything was
this.
all of that stuff. The collar, captain's collar pins.
Right.
What Jerry got for him, the hat.
Okay. So
But-
he took all his back probably with him to Graceland?
Oh yeah, he took it with him.
Yeah.
That picture, the black and white picture, you can't tell, but if you look at the wallpaper, that's the same wallpaper.
Oh, yeah.
And that picture with me and Bob and Jerry and
Okay.
Elvis up there at the top.
Wow. Now, and I'm bouncing around here, you got a yellow Seville,
I
correct?
don't know nothing. We say you gotta file it.
What color was your car?
Yellow.
Was it yellow?
I'm trying to figure out, were you guys really in law enforcement, or is this the mob of Denver?
We've been
Sometimes you
accused of
did. Yeah, sometimes you don't know.
You guys, you're like the Denver Mafia. I mean, there's the Memphis Mafia. You're like the Denver Mafia.
Been called that before.
So y'all had been to Vegas, right?
Y'all
Cal-
from Texas?
It's the Nashville
Tennessee.
coming out of me a bit.
Tennessee, y'all.
Um,
Yeah, we were all in Vegas.
okay, so Vegas, a lot of dates. You're all at Graceland, correct? Okay, and then Vail.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were all at the funeral.
Wow, yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
Wow.
That uniform, you can
Jerry's.
tell in that picture right there where he's like, he was so proud of that uniform.
Yeah.
I mean, he wanted one so bad because Jerry looked so good in his uniform all the time anyway.
Right.
And he wanted one so bad that when he wanted it all. He wanted the captain's bars. He wanted the hat. I mean, he had a stick pin, which was a little Denver police badge stick pin to keep the tie against his shirt. I mean, he looked amazing in that uniform, and he really did look good.
One thing I danced around asking, because I don't want to offend anybody or upset anybody, because you guys knew Elvis now. Again, I'm on the outside looking in. I grew up as a fan. Was there any concern with Elvis regarding his health and use habits?
Yeah.
There in '76, and did anybody bring anything up? And the reason I'm asking, I'm not asking, did you bring it up? Well, if you didn't, you should have. It's not that. I had heard maybe there might have been some things said from other entourage members, and I didn't know if there was concern.
Nobody ever talked about anything that he was doing. The only information that we had was the fact that we knew the two doctors that he was seeing were prescribing medication for him, and it was you could almost tell. Bob and I and my brother had been around drug addicts long enough, but all of his stuff was prescription.
Right.
And it was, they gave him downers to let him go to sleep at night, and then in the morning they'd give him uppers to wake him up because he'd be so drowsy.
Right.
So the combination of those two, I flew down before these guys came down. I flew down to Memphis the night he died, and I was at the hospital with Joe when the pathologist came out.
Right.
And his exact words were that he said his heart just exploded. I mean, and it was from the up and down and up and down and up and down. But as far as anything else, in fact, Bob made a comment one day when Elvis was there, and I don't know whether Bob remembers it. He's one to never not say what he believed. And he said one day, I better never smell any marijuana. And I mean, Elvis looked at him. He said, you'll never smell any marijuana around here. None of my guys, nobody, he said.
Right.
So his use of drugs, as far as anything we ever knew, were all the prescriptions. And I believe the two doctors killed him. And the other one was Elias Ghanem in Las Vegas. That was the other doctor, who was known by everybody to do that to the stars.
Yeah.
I mean, he was known. I mean, everybody knew it. DEA worked several cases trying to get him. They worked several cases trying to catch him, and never did. And he died.
Right.
I don't know whether Nicopolis is still alive. Do you?
No, he's passed on.
Did
Yeah,
he
he's
pass
gone.
on?
Yeah, and I think his wife just died recently as
But
well. So, yeah.
but Ghanem was one of the biggest contributors in because he was such a known drug supplier for all the stars. I know that the Drug Enforcement Administration tried and tried and tried to get him, but he always hid behind that client-patient relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And how can you say this patient doesn't need that? I mean, it's. I think maybe today rules have changed and they could probably do more, but Bob and I and my brother, we never. When he was with us, he was up, he was lucent. He was. I mean, like Bob said and my brother said. I mean, he'd do these karate kicks and jumps, and
Oh, man.
I mean, he was never out of it when he was around us ever. And I think a lot of it was for the respect of us, knowing that we were in the police department, and that wasn't something that we would have put up with, especially him. I mean, he was very vocal about, because we had worked other concerts with that was one of the things we did a lot. We worked extra duty, and we worked a lot of concerts, and he one night went up to a stage where we had a rock group playing and pulled one of the people right off the stage because he was smoking dope. I mean, this is way before.
Really?
Yes, I was there. Embarrassed, but I was there.
Do you recall what band?
I
I
don't
don't know, some hippies.
Yeah,
Some hippie band.
but he pulled him right off the stage that night. I mean, so like I said, I really believe Elvis had the respect for us that we heard later he was indulging more besides the uppers and the downers with some of the painkillers.
Yeah.
But that doctor that night was very adamant about the fact that it was definitely not a drug overdose, which a lot of people had said and heard. I mean, I was sitting right there when he came out, and he said his heart exploded. I know the guy. He was I don't think tricked into the drug thing, but the doctors made it too easy for him for what he did for them.
Right.
I know for a fact that Elvis lent Dr. Nicopoulos thousands of dollars.
Right.
Put him in a couple of businesses that went defunct. And as far as Ghanem, if you ever saw Ghanem, I only saw him one time when he came to the hotel in Vegas, and he had diamond rings and gold neck. He didn't look like a doctor. I mean, he wanted to be a superstar.
Right.
Is what he wanted to be, and that was his way to get in there, was to help these people with
Right.
their drug problems.
Ron, let me interject something here, and tell me if you don't agree with me, but Elvis was such a trusting person. He figured if his doctors are telling him he needs this stuff, then he's going by, it was gospel.
Right.
He figured if they're telling me I need it, I'm going to take it.
Sure.
Wouldn't you agree?
He in the thing that, like I said, when we first met him, and Bob brought up the thing about, I mean, I put my hand over my eyes, but I knew Bob would say something. Being in that hotel for 3 days when we first met him the very first time, he came out and said, "I better not smell any marijuana." And Elvis heard what he said. And he came out and said, "You ain't ever gonna. My guys don't do any of that stuff around here." And we never did. I mean,
In
we
fact,
never.
he said, "I'm going to make them leave their motel room doors cracked open, and I want you to check them."
That's right.
Oh,
No
That's exactly
kidding.
what he said.
The
Yeah.
next day, I did it that night.
Really?
Yeah, he said, "Do it." I do it.
Bob probably did it twice.
Yeah, more than twice.
Yeah, he's
Now,
not shy.
with that said, they all had a woman in there with them.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I figured that was probably an ongoing thing. I mean, and I'm not.
Well, and
I mean, it's part of
everybody knows the story of Elvis and women. I mean, it was just, unless he was with a person before he got hooked up with, like, Linda.
Right.
When he and Priscilla were just going through their bad times, which is right when we first met him, was right at kind of the end of their relationship.
Sure.
I mean, whenever he showed up here, he showed up with somebody different.
Right.
And I mean, I remember one night he came in here and he had identical twins, and I mean, they were identical.
No kidding.
Identical. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in the outer room of the suite that he was in, and it was time to go to bed, and he walked in with these two gals into the room, and he closed the door, and pretty soon he opened the door and he looked out and he goes, "I'll bet you guys wish you were me." I mean,
Was this 76? Or
no,
that was before that.
way earlier. No, this is when.
73?
Yeah, even before that, I'm trying to
Really?
remember when he and Priscilla got a divorce, because it was right after we first met him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
Early
right
70s.
After, yeah, it was right after we first met him. But yeah, he was definitely a ladies' man. I mean,
What was the name of the Hill Hotel though, downtown?
the one with the where the Radisson,
Yeah.
where we had the Playboy Club upstairs.
Yeah.
The Radisson. That's the very first hotel he stayed in when he came. When we first met him, the first time he came here on a tour.
70.
Yeah, end of '69 or '70, early '70.
Okay.
I don't think we picked the hotel. I think Joe picked the hotel
Joe did,
because
yeah.
it had the Playboy Club
Oh,
upstairs.
yeah.
And we secured the whole 11th floor for him. I'll never forget that.
Really?
They had the whole 11th floor. We had to take the two fire escape doors, which were illegal. The fire department see them. We had sheets wrapped around and tied so you couldn't open the doors from the outside on the fire escape doors.
Wow.
And then Bob and I and a couple other guys, when you'd get off in that hotel, the elevators ran up the center of the hotel. So when you'd get off on a floor, you go either left or right. Well, he had the whole floor, so we sealed the elevator. So when the elevator, you couldn't turn them off.
Right.
But if somebody opened them, there was 2 or 3 cops sitting right there saying, "You can't get off on this floor."
And he
Wow.
heard me telling Ron, I didn't pay any attention, but he was standing, over there, and I told, cause I'm looking at these guys getting long hair, da da da. So I told Ron, I said, "Man, we're gonna make some busts tonight," And Elvis came over and says, "I'm gonna order them to leave their rooms open." "And how about yours?" "Yeah, mine will be open too," he says. And I did, checked them all.
Man.
That's
That's wild.
that-
It really is. I mean,
And you know what? When you talk about fate, and I think we've all agreed it was fate that put us together, because we found out later that whenever he would do a tour, the last city on the tour, he would spend 2 or 3 extra days just to relax, because that tour, you go in, you do a, when we'd travel with him, you'd go in and you do a city. The minute you get off stage, you go right to the airport, get on an airplane, go to the next city. The next night, the same thing.
Right.
You get off stage, you go right to the airport, go to the next city. And you do 14 or 15 of those in a row. So the last city, he would always spend 2 or 3 days. Well, fate, Denver was the last city on the
Wow.
tour that year. So that's why we were there for 3 days around the clock.
Wow.
And that's why we became so close.
sure.
And so when he said things to us like, "I'll come back and call you guys," or "I'll come back, we'll go snowmobiling," we all sat around and said, "Yeah, bullshit, that ain't
Right.
gonna happen." But it did, and he just,
Well, up in Vail, he had a snowmobile,
Yeah.
and he would take it out, 11, 12 o'clock at night, out the door, Well, the problem was he would get in there and drive it like I probably would, like a nut. Well, he was going over, what do they call those ski
The
things?
moguls.
The moguls. Pretty soon the ski patrol for Vail showed up. I said, "You can't be doing that." He said, "We got to get them ready for, the skiers." So I went to try to tell Elvis, we can't be jumping over there anymore. Okay.
He's basically like a kid,
yeah.
is he not?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh
yeah, like a
absolutely.
kid.
That's a perfect description. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, he would always say or act like he wanted to be part of the guys, but
Couldn't.
he couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best description. He couldn't because he was just like the night at the mine company. We had him camouflaged pretty darn good.
Right.
Maybe too good.
Yeah.
Because when they didn't recognize him, it kind of bothered him a little
Yeah.
bit. Because he'd been so used to everywhere he went, everybody making a big deal, and all of a sudden, Joe called it. Joe said, "Hey, you guys did too good a job of putting him in that uniform," and he's not used to not being recognized.
Right.
So.
Well, it's funny. Linda Thompson shared the same story. That he,
Oh, did she?
Yeah, that he wasn't recognized, and it kind of bothered him. And she said he started making his rounds, like you said.
Yeah.
and before you knew it, everybody knew, and it was suddenly like he was back.
You know, you
She's
can
a
tell
great
it's
gal.
Elvis.
Yeah,
you
I've
know.
heard a lot
She
of good
is
things
a
about
great
him.
His
gal.
sideburns, you know, I mean, in a uniform.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I was up at the Playboy Club with you guys.
Were you?
Yeah, I can't remember, but I remember going up there, and I'm sure it was with you guys. That's the only time I've ever been up there.
Is it still standing, that building?
No,
Oh,
it's not.
The building's still there. It was turned into a condo.
Yeah.
The Playboy Club went away years
Oh,
ago.
yeah,
I
sure.
remember that.
But Linda was the classiest next to Priscilla that Elvis was ever with.
Yeah.
I mean,
Without
she
a
was
doubt.
she was on the airplane with us the night we came back from
She's still a class act,
Memphis
yeah.
with for the party.
Oh,
She
okay.
was on Bob and I and her went and shopped for Lisa for toys. Remember,
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
birthday
Really?
party? Yeah,
Yeah,
in Memphis.
birthday.
We took Bob and I drove her around to the shopping centers,
No kidding.
buying presents for her that day. For
Wow.
Lisa, yeah.
Wow.
I think I have a recent picture of her and I
Yeah.
together. She was at Joe's funeral with me.
Oh, was she really?
Mhm.
Now, you were a pallbearer, correct, for
Mhm,
Joe?
mhm.
I always enjoyed talking to Joe the times that I was, fortunate enough to cross paths with him.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Ron sent me one day to Combs Aircraft. It was when it used to be Stapleton Airport,
Right.
and then Combs Aircraft was right there on Stapleton's property, and that's where all the chartered flights and private planes used to fly
Sure.
into.
The upper crust of society.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so Ron asked me one day to go out to Combs because Linda was flying in. Elvis was already here. Linda was flying in on his small little 12-passenger jet that he had. And so I went out to Combs, and I got there before they landed, so I'm just waiting. And pretty soon the plane lands, and they come taxiing up, and they stopped, and I walked out to meet her, and they opened up the door and put the steps out. And I'm telling you, she stepped out onto the whatever it's called to come down those steps,
Right.
and she was wearing a black leather outfit with red trim on it. She looked as good or better than any model you've ever
Right.
seen coming down
Wow.
the steps
She's
from
gorgeous
that,
lady.
and she was absolutely beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah. I tell you what stories. I mean, truly amazing. All
Oh.
your stories. I mean, for just the connection you had with Elvis. When and not then on a dark note. Like where the last time you talked to Elvis? I mean, was it late '76 or up into
Just
'77?
before he died.
I talked to him, believe it or not, I talked to him, it was either 2 or 3 days before he died because...
Really?
Yeah, because I was going on that tour with him. I was supposed to go on that tour with him.
Okay.
And
Wow.
Joe called, I'll never forget where I was at. I was at 104th in Wadsworth, where I was keeping my horses at the time.
Sure.
And Joe called me on the phone, he said, I got some really bad news. And I went right to the airport and flew right down there.
Wow. Wow, that's heavy. I had no idea.
For his for his funeral, there were only 200 people invited to Graceland to be inside Graceland for the services, and then from there, the procession went from Graceland down Elvis Presley Boulevard to the cemetery,
Right.
and there were only 200 people that were actually invited there. And we were fortunate enough to be part of that,
When Bob and I were standing, we took turns standing by the coffin when he was laying in rest at Graceland. And there was a line of just nothing but superstars coming through.
Sure.
And James Brown,
I was just going to
Remember
say
I
James
told you?
Brown. Yeah.
he dropped to his knees crying. Do you remember that? He was on his knees crying. I get the chills when I think
Wow.
about it.
Have you been to Graceland, Stephen?
Oh yeah, many.
You have
times.
been. So,
Many
I
times.
don't know if it's still the same as it was then, but
It's not.
isn't it?
No, it's a big production now, boy.
Okay, well, when you walk through the front door into that big foyer,
Mhm.
to the right was like a big great room,
Right.
and then to the left was a big living room.
Right.
Those are
Right.
still there.
Are
Yeah,
they still
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Okay. Well, they had, as you walk in, the big room to the right had it all set up for visitors with rows of chairs, and that's where his coffin was, all the way up at the front of that room. And during the service there at Graceland, and it was packed. I mean, it was absolutely packed. I'm standing in the foyer, just listening to everything, and in the room behind me, in the living room, I could hear this woman sobbing. I mean, just sobbing like crazy. And I thought, what the heck is that, you know? So I kind of made my way back, and I'm trying to see, but there were so many people, it's hard to see. Pretty soon I was able to make out through the people. Up against the wall, it was Ann-Margret.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
and who was her husband? Roger
Moore.
Moore. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
That, it was her that was just sobbing
Wow.
like crazy back there. It was
Wow.
just-
I was fortunate to have worked with her. She did a film in Nashville about
Oh.
20 years ago, and I was an extra in the film. But I was thrilled
Nice.
because I got a chance to meet
Sure.
her.
She's
Uh,
gorgeous.
Oh, beautiful. And I remember asking her about Elvis, and it literally, she grabbed my hand, and it literally took her to another place in time. I mean, she just, when I said Elvis's name, it's just, she took on a whole new, different aura about her,
Sure.
So you could tell she truly loved
yeah.
him.
They were
Yeah.
supposed to marry. They really were.
Yeah, I see you.
Oh, this is the one that Elvis gave. You have yours on too?
No, I left it.
I didn't wear mine.
Oh yeah, y'all still got him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't wear it very often. I'm afraid I'm going to end up losing it.
Yeah.
No, I totally
So I
understand.
don't-
There's a picture of his back there. I've got a picture back there.
Yeah, there's mine. Yeah, that's mine over there. Where is it?
Oh, right
There it is, right there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And I've met all the guys, the entourage, the Memphis Mafia. I've met all them. You guys really, from what you guys were as tight as those guys were with Elvis. I mean, that's one reason I asked if he had like a nickname for you. But you guys were law enforcement. I feel like he had a different respect for y'all.
We always called him EP.
Yeah, that's what Ron was saying, which is cool. Well, I really appreciate y'all. Really appreciate y'all having me here. Seriously, Nick, Bobby, Ron, Bob. Really, thank you so much. Roberto. Okay, we'll go through Roberto. You got the big gun, so I'll call you anything you want me to call you. So.